on the clock up here, so that'll be our official time. So we'll go ahead and call this advertised meeting into session. And this will be a meeting on the budget. And Superintendent, these are your staff members. And so, sir, I'll turn it over to you. You can call them forward and go through your presentations.
I appreciate it. And I know, like we've shared with the board previously, as you know, when you start getting to the point where a budget is submitted to the school board, of course, this is one aspect of the budget. The other portions will come before you in July for vote. But I say all that to say a lot of discussion, a lot of thought goes into this. As you know, FTE projections are made well in advance of where we are now, and so discussions have to also be made and had well before now. Julie and her team, they've done a great job taking all the discussions and putting before you what you have today, plus on what you'll see in July. And I just appreciate each of our departments who've done a great job putting their department structure together. There's not a whole bunch of changes to the budget, so I think that's a good thing. But at this point, I'll turn it over to Ms. Perry, and she'll take the lead.
All right, yes, sir. It's a little different format this year. I tried to make things easier to use. So what I've done is I've sent you each a link to the department budget, the project budget, and then those school budget pages. But for this purpose, this department budget book is reorganized based on our agenda, so you're not having to go crazy trying to find the right page.
Okay, good.
So I'd like to go over the summary pages in this first. So the thicker book, if you'll go ahead and go to the first page. This is the organization chart for the whole district. If you'll notice that there's no deputy superintendent anymore, because the superintendent is recommending that we delete the deputy superintendent position and add an assistant superintendent of operations.
And Ms. Perry,
Yes, sir.
just for, we can obviously have folks from the public who might be watching this as well. And as you know, Mr. Horton, as deputy superintendent, used to be assistant superintendent over MIS. Mr. Horton took over, or kept MIS, but then also took on all of operations, which was maintenance, facilities, transportation, food services, also took over the Okaloosa Public Schools Foundation. So we made him a deputy superintendent to take on all of those roles. And where we are today, we decided to take it back to its original structure. The original structure, which was an assistant superintendent over the MIS side of the house and an assistant superintendent over the operations side of the house. So this puts before you the original structure of how it used to be.
Yes.
And I'd just like to interject something for the public also, Superintendent. And people often ask, what does the school board do? And I often reply with, well, we do the budget and we do policies. And so they may be curious about why the superintendent is talking about the budget. And that's because the law stipulates that the superintendent, i.e., and his staff, Ms. Perry and all of her accountants and all of her people, and along with, of course, your other cohorts in your departments, are compelled to present to the school board a balanced budget. In other words, that our expenditures will meet our revenue. And I think that's what we meant when we talked about FTE projections and all those kinds of things. And of course, then once you present the budget to the school board, that's when the school board will act on the budget. And so when I say that we do the budget and we do policies, I just wanted the public to understand that the superintendent is the one that has the staff and are most capable of knowing the requirements and all the things that we're compelled to do in the school district, and are most capable of presenting a budget of over, what is it this time, 400 million, 700 million, where are we
It
at?
was 700 million last year.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so
But we lost some of that COVID money, so
Right.
we're back down. But anyway, I just wanted the public to know that's why we're going through this process. And then the board will formally act to approve or amend this budget. Okay?
Yes,
All
sir.
right, thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay. So the next page, this is an overview of the general fund new revenue that we're expecting for the year. What it shows you is 21-22 actual revenue, 22-23 actual, 23-24, I put estimated actual because we haven't closed the year out yet, and then the 24-25 estimated. Now, and then the increase decrease is comparing 23-24 to 24-25. I wanted to point out a really large number, about 2/3 of the way down that page. It's showing that the FEFP base funding, it's based on a couple other things, is $19 million increase. Well, the only reason it's showing that much is because 24-25 includes that $15 million family empowerment scholarships that we have to budget in 24-25. They've already pulled the money back in 23-24. So that makes it look like we're getting a lot more than we are. So I didn't want you to think, on that.
Okay, so
Uh-huh,
it looks like we're getting more than we are.
right, because the family empowerment scholarships.
Okay, but when we subtract that out,
We are getting a little more, yes, for next year from the Department of Education.
okay, but when we subtract out the family empowerment scholarships, whatever.
Well, you'd have to subtract that out. You'd have to subtract out the base funding that we're setting aside for FTE that we don't expect to have. So when it all comes down to it,
Where would that number be?
okay, yes, and.
Oh,
and-
okay, you ca- okay.
Yeah, and I don't have that in
Okay.
the book at this time.
Okay,
But I can get those numbers for you, but,
okay,
yeah.
all right.
Well, and along those lines then, I recently saw I guess it would be called a press release about a lot of money. And
Oh, yes, sir.
I want to say maybe, was it $2 billion? That was allocated for teachers in Florida. Is that money included in this budget?
Okay, the way it works is that the state gives us base funding per student. And now they say, well, you need to make sure you use a certain amount of that base funding to increase the teachers' salaries. The amount they've directed us to use would give about less than a 1.5% raise for teachers.
So that's that money that I've read about. That's not a windfall of new money coming to the district.
sir.
You've included that in this budget.
Right, because
Okay,
I know
all
the
right.
superintendent and the school board
Okay.
have always strived to
Yeah.
try to do that.
I know. I just want to make sure.
Yes.
I mean, if we were going to get a bunch of new money, I wanted to know that, but it sounds like you've already included it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And, yes, and when we, the state would advertise that the FEFP has increased about 14.7 million. But I have to set aside money for family empowerment scholarships, increases, charter schools, the FTE that we don't project. When it comes down to it, it's about a $4.2 million increase, which is, we're thankful to have an increase.
Oh, yeah, it could be
Yes.
worse.
Yes.
So
Been
what-
there.
Now,
Go ahead.
so from the $2 billion that we're reading about, when it comes down to Marlette District, we're talking about less than, I think you said, a 1%?
It's about 2 million. They're saying out of our FEFP base funding, we have to spend, I think it's 2.1 million for
So
teacher
it's
salary
about
wages,
1%.
which is about 1.5%, maybe.
Okay, that answers that.
Yeah.
And I think that was a good question on that 19 million where Ms. Perry said 15 million of that is family empowerment scholarship. And then I think, can't remember who made the statement. And then, of course, we're projected to have more students from the state than we anticipate having.
Mhm.
And I don't have that number right off the top of my head, but I believe when we looked at it, it was either 3 to 4 million
Yes, sir.
was close to that number.
Mhm.
So again, appreciate the increase in funding, because you'd rather have that than a decrease. But I appreciate Ms. Perry doing a good job of looking at the fine details of every penny.
Well, and I guess this is the time to say this, and maybe some of you have seen this, but you can imagine the impact that those scholarships or vouchers, choose your own term, what that's having in the state of Florida. I think I saw that Broward is projecting that they're going to close 40 schools.
Oh,
And that's just Broward. Now, and of course, that's not immediately, but that's over a period of time. And that's a consequence of having less dollars, less students.
yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
And since we're getting to that explanation, Ms. Perry, would you mind for those in the public watching, the Family Empowerment Scholarships? What does that mean?
That is something that a parent can apply for their student to go to private schools or do homeschooling.
Okay.
Mhm.
And we've certainly seen increase in that, especially since COVID, really. And
Yep.
so when.
So each year that's gone up. But one thing to remember is, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be, is the vast majority of the students that are receiving the Family Empowerment Scholarship in Okaloosa never attended Okaloosa schools.
And that's a good point, Superintendent. Thank you for making that. And I think all of that speaks to the fact that we have a good school system, and students are sticking with the school system. I mean, that's the whole idea of competition, right? Is for us to have a good school system and compete so that folks stay with the school system. And that's what's happened. So good job. But I will add, that's not the case around the state, okay? And they're leaving. And
So
now-
where are they
now-
coming from then? Are they military?
No, ma'am. So these are,
Yeah.
and again, correct me if I'm wrong, these are students who are already homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
These are students who are already in private school,
Okay.
who are eligible for these dollars.
Well, and that's the difference, isn't it? In the past, we didn't pay for that many years ago.
Right,
Now we do under this legislation.
right. It was a separate allocation, and then they moved it into the FEFP
Uh-huh.
and increased it.
All right.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry for the digression, but
No.
just want to know where that money was.
Good to know, yeah.
Yes, sir. And then on the next page, I just wanted to point out, like, large changes. You can see, I should have done some lines on here.
Well, you're on page 4, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, sir.
All right.
Page 3.
Page 3?
Page 3.
Okay.
Page 3. So there you can see that negative 2.7 for Florida school recognition. That's because the last couple of years, it has not been a part of the FEFP at the beginning of the year, where it used to be that we knew ahead of time that we would receive the money, I could budget it. But because I don't know, I can't budget it. That's why you see that decrease. And the Triumph grants, negative 10.9, that's because there's not any new revenue for Triumph. That Triumph revenue that we've got in 23, 24, we're going to then use it also in the new year.
But it's not new, that's why it's
It's not
listed like
new.
that.
It's, yeah,
But
there's
we
not-
still have it.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. And the same with, there's some other grants too from the state. Our schools and departments have been very busy getting grants.
Yeah.
And just define what the Florida School Recognition Program is, just so we're all on the same page.
That is for schools that are either have been graded as an A, or their letter grade has increased by 1 from the previous year. They also could be a school that has increased by 2 letter grades the previous year and maintained. So there's a few different ways that they can receive that money.
All right, so now let's talk about that. So I'm looking at 3362, right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm showing that 23, 24, we'll receive, let's just say 2.8 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
But then in 24, 25, it shows nothing.
Because, yeah, and before COVID, when we would get the FEFP, there would be a line item for
Right.
school recognition.
Right.
And so I would budget it.
Right.
Since COVID happened, they haven't been doing it. They started doing it again in 22, 23.
Okay.
But that became a separate state allocation.
Uh-huh.
So because I don't know if we're gonna get any or not, it's not a part of my initial allocation.
That's right.
I can't budget it.
No, that's right, and that makes sense. So what does that mean, though? Does that mean that
That,
there will be bonus money for A schools, or there won't be?
it depends on it depends on the governor and.
The legislature,
Yeah, the legislature.
when they do their final budget? I mean, in other words, when they do their final budget, it may be in there, is that right?
It could be.
Could be. Mm-hmm.
Or it may not be.
Right.
And if it's not gonna be, then there won't be any bonuses.
Correct.
I mean, we just need to put that on the table.
Yes, sir.
Because there are a lot of people, a lot of schools that will receive A's that in the past, they receive bonuses. But because it's not a direct, specific allocation.
Right, and we don't really know what they're doing from year to year lately.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we just leave it blank.
Yes, sir.
Good, okay.
So
Right.
I thought the governor had approved his budget.
Pardon?
Has the governor not approved his total budget yet?
I have to check. But they haven't, but even if they have, if they do have school recognition in there, I can't, there's no amount that's been allocated to
Oh,
us,
yeah.
so I can't
You
budget
don't know what it is, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It used to be, pre-COVID, it would be $100 per FTE
Mhm.
that they would budget, and they would tell me, budget this amount. But now you just never know how much it's gonna be.
Makes
Well-
it challenging.
Well, we know what it
Yes.
is right now.
Yes.
Zero.
Zero.
Zero. Yeah.
And Dr. White, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
so last year there were dollars allocated
Mm-hmm.
for the bonuses, correct?
Yes, sir.
This is, and based on the criteria that you said,
Yes, sir.
the previous year, were there dollars allocated?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I would anticipate that dollars will be allocated. However, we will not know until the specific amount is given to Okaloosa.
and that number comes from the state.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They'll send a memo telling us how much we get, and then I'll appropriate it and let the schools know.
So we're still waiting for that memo.
Pardon?
We're still waiting for that memo.
Yes, sir.
Mm,
It-
okay.
Well, last year, we didn't get the number till February, even though the plans were due by February 1st. So we did some preemptive strikes and tried to help schools make sure they were ready for it.
Well, I'm sorry to follow up, but does that mean you'll have to take that money out of our budget?
Oh, no.
Or would that be new
Oh, no.
revenue?
We wait until we get it from the state.
New revenue? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, what Ms. Perry just said,
Mm-hmm.
where she sent out information to schools ahead of time to be prepared for when those dollars are allocated. Because I know there are many folks who
Yeah.
were looking forward to those bonuses, and they should, and they're well-earned. But I appreciate Mrs. Perry and her group getting ahead of it, so
Okay.
that way schools could get their plans completed to be able to get dollars as quickly as possible. And I know sometimes folks would want it even quicker, but again, I do appreciate you getting out ahead of that.
All right, good. I'm glad you told them. Okay.
Okay. The bottom of page 3 is district school taxes going up 4.8. Just remember that district school taxes, most of that is going to be the portion of the base funding that we have to collect a certain millage for. And then the rest of it is our discretionary operating. But and next time, what I'll make sure, I didn't think about putting in here, but I will put in the FEFP comparison that I shared with each of you individually. I'll make sure and include that next time.
And you just said school district taxes went up 4.8 million.
Mhm.
Why is that?
Because they won't pay us anything. They will not give us any money unless we collect a certain millage. And then
And who establishes the millage?
There you go.
the state,
Okay, so the state of Florida
yes,
establishes the millage.
right. And the .748 that they call discretionary operating millage, they plan on us collecting it. They include it in the FEFP and say that's our total revenue. So
Yeah.
we have to collect
So this
it.
board does not have anything to do with that millage.
No, ma'am.
Right.
No, we just collect what they tell us to
They
collect.
tell us what we have to collect.
Well, I think we can not do what they say, but if I remember, then we forfeit 80 million.
Yeah,
Something along those lines.
Well, yep, more than that.
There you go.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And these are the property taxes?
Sir?
These are
Yep.
the property taxes?
Yes, sir.
And so values of homes and properties go up, which also generates these additional dollars?
That's right.
I'm sorry. I was,
Right.
That's right. As home values go up,
yes,
and even if the millage stays the same, the amount of taxes that are collected goes up.
right. And if that happens, then we have to advertise that we are increasing taxes.
Right. Even
Although
though
we
e-
didn't really
right.
do it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know we're doing a lot of discussion on this, but just, we get these questions every
Yeah.
year.
Oh.
Yes, we do.
And then even the advertisement in the paper that says that we're increasing the taxes, I think the wording is, it's not our
Oh,
wording.
no, it's mandated.
So explain that?
We have certain wording that we have to use. We're required to use by.
You mean the lawyer's not responsible for writing that?
I don't think he wants to be.
But our name is signed at the bottom.
Oh, yeah,
of
yeah,
it,
yeah.
On our letterhead.
Right.
So those were the big ones that I wanted to point out to you.
Okay.
So then if you will go to page 6. So, mhm. So this is the comparison of, no, this is the breakdown of how much the departments are requesting for 24-25. We've always put the maintenance and transportation at the top in the subtotal because those departments are working primarily at the schools rather than being more of a department overhead. And then the rest of the departments are shown below. A couple of things I wanted to point out. Center 9012 instructional technology, we had gotten down to only having one position and a small operating budget. So we were going to move that position into Center 9022 information systems. That's why you won't see a budget for 9012 instructional technology in here. The Director 1 which was at the Center 9140 operations. Superintendent is recommending to delete the Director 1 position and add that Assistant Superintendent of Operations. And then conversely, you know how we added an Assistant Superintendent of MIS and Community Relations earlier? That now can be funded by the Deputy Superintendent, no longer being part of the budget.
Right.
So then the Bay Area office, of course, we don't need that cost center anymore.
Mhm.
So it's 9121 print shop. That position, the supervisor was previously paid for as 50% print shop, 50% Bay Area office. Since there's no more Bay Area office, I've moved that 50% to district transfers project. And then any budget that was originally in Bay Area, I've just moved to here, to Niceville. So Niceville Central will go up, but that's just because we don't have any Bay Area office anymore. Then the next 2 pages, you'll see.
Well, let's
Yes,
go
sir.
back and
Mhm.
on this. So I look at the bottom line here,
Mhm.
total all departments.
Yes, sir.
So what is that, how do we compare that to last year? Is
On
there
the
a
next
comparison?
page.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yep. So it's page 7.
All right.
23-24, overall budget, 35.6, compared to 24-25, 35.1. That's a reduction of 500,000. I will say the main reason for that reduction is that we are no longer funding bus driver standby positions. Those were positions that we would hire a new bus driver. They would be in temporarily until they got their route. Instead, because we have so many vacant positions, we'll just assign them directly into a position.
So those are all the parentheticals on 9213 at the top. 9313, is that right?
Yes, sir. 9313 at the top through 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313. 9313.
Okay.
Well, that is part of it, but that's going to be the majority of the decrease.
Okay. Bless you. All right.
And if you look at the next page, page 8.
Well, let me just say,
Oh,
so,
I was gonna break-
what we're saying is that our departmental budgets
Mhm.
decreased by $500,000
Yes, sir.
this year. Okay.
And then the next page, I've also broken it down a little further to show you the increases, decreases. First of all, salaries and benefits.
Right.
The 2 years went down 588,000. And then you can see the total operational budgets went up only 83,000. And then we'll go through each one, and I'll show you by objects how they changed. And another sheet, the next one, number 9, that I'd like to show you. This is a comparison of positions, 23-24 beginning to 24-25 beginning. It's broken down by admin managerial, ed support, instructional, professional, technical. And if you want to go down to the bottom lines, you can see admin managerial in that first column under 23-24 was a total of 62.87. In 24-25, it's a total of 63.08. So what, that's a point, I can't think right now. 13, 8, 21.21. And then the educational support, of course, we know that went down because of the bus driver standbys. Instructional is very close to the same. Professional, technical, it went down 3. That was actually a coding error, and I'll get to that later. We didn't truly go down 3 professional, technical.
All right, so the bottom line, are we saying that we reduced 15.48 positions?
That's budgeted positions, because remember that.
Right, they might be
Some-
unfilled, but they were budgeted.
Right, correct.
All right.
Now, the rest of the pages in this book are the same pages that are the detail pages of each department. But if you want to change, now you can leave that open, but go to this comparison book, the thinner book. This is where I've just kind of got a summary of of these things that are in that book.
Right.
And the first page is the budget that we already looked at, that we knew the summary by department. I've just got it reorganized to match the agenda. And the next page is by object, all of the departments. Now, I see when I run down these increase, decrease column, I see a big decrease on 0231 health insurance, 942,000. Most of that is going to be because we're not budgeting all those bus driver standby positions.
Well, how are we paying for those then?
Pardon?
How are we paying for those?
The bus driver standbys,
Mhm.
we're not going to use them anymore. We're just, what we're doing is, instead of putting them in a standby and then moving them to a regular, we're going to put them straight into a regular. 'Cause
Okay.
the standby, we don't have enough bus drivers to have just somebody that's a,
Right.
And Ms. Perry, just for a second on that. So my understanding is we had the standby bus driver positions,
mhm.
and then we also, in essence, had a substitute type bus driver position. So just explain that. So we already had the substitute piece, but then we also had the standby piece. And I may have said that a little off, but just explain that.
Well, from what I understood, it was just that the actual positions were standby, and I thought that they were for like subbing, to having extra positions to, if somebody was out. But because we don't even have all the regular positions filled, we can't do that. I mean, there was no reason to tie the budget money up in those positions when they were in.
So specifically, if we had 40 bus drivers vacant, we can spend those vacant dollars for the substitutes rather than have those vacant dollars plus now budgeting another 800,000 on that other category.
But you're still gonna hire those 40 substitutes.
Oh,
We're-
absolutely.
I mean, we're not saying
Oh,
we're not gonna.
no,
right.
we're hiring everybody we can
Yeah,
on the
you can,
buses.
right,
Yes.
okay.
And
Oh.
another reason for the reduction in the medical insurance is that the move to self-insured
That was my question.
has has been the right decision. We were, for years, we were overpaying United Healthcare. They were making a lot of money on us.
Mhm.
I was able to put a little bit less money into, what happens is we don't pay premiums anymore because we're not fully insured. We are self-insured. So we set money aside in a special fund that we're going to use to pay claims. Right now, we have about 19 million that we have not used to date. So,
Well, how much did we start with?
well, it was zero, but.
Zero.
Yes, the
That's
first.
the point.
Yes, the first year was 8 million, and this year up to date is 11. So we have been we're overfunding that. But we want to make sure and have money for rainy days. Our advisors have said that we have to have at least 6 to 7 million. We have 19. So in order to align the appropriations and the revenue better and to help fill the holes that ESSER has left, after discussing with the superintendent and with our
Broker?
broker, yeah, I'm sorry, my words aren't going, said that by cutting about $3 million out of our contributions, we would still be putting in more money than we expect to pay out. Because remember, once we put money in that medical fund, we cannot take it out.
Now, where'd that come from? Where's that rule? Is that law or?
No, we have to make the decision of how much we think. It's just like when you budget your electricity.
I see.
How much
Okay.
much money do you think you're gonna spend
All
on
right.
electricity? That's how much we're gonna budget. How much do we think we're gonna spend on claims?
All right.
So once we do that, we can't change that. We can't take from it.
Oh, we can't take from it, no ma'am. All we could.
That's what you're saying. That's what he's asking is there a rule that we agreed to, that how much we were gonna put in there, that we can't take any of it?
Oh, no, we,
Oh.
no, once we put it in, it cannot come back out.
Okay.
So if we feel like we are putting more in than we need to, we need to not do that at the
Don't
front
put it
end.
in, right.
Because once
Just
you
don't
put it in, it's there.
But we can use it for other things, right? Before it's put in that,
Yes, if you don't put it in, then we use it to pay all the other things that we need to pay for.
Remind
I
me
mean,
again.
everything in the operating budget, or,
I'm
is
sorry.
there
I
a
don't think so.
percentage we have to put in there?
no ma'am. We just have to make sure we cover our claims.
So,
Oh, and with the safe harbor, yeah, which we have
Oh.
abundantly.
okay, so
Sa-
yeah, we
safe-
have that 19 million in the safe harbor part, right?
Yeah,
Is that
yes,
right?
the
Okay.
safe harbor is required to be 6 to 7.
So can we not, as we're making that money, put it somewhere else and then at the end, if we didn't use it, move it into the safe harbor?
No,
Okay.
no, I have to decide, I have to kind of charge myself each month. I have to decide how much I'm gonna put in
Okay.
each month.
You have to
Because
go
I
in
have to
commit
have
to it.
that money in there, yeah.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
I
'Cause
can't
I was
look
thinking,
back.
well, we'll just hold that back.
It's a monthly
And then
thing.
if we don't
Yeah,
need
that-
it, we'll just throw it back, move it to that.
That would be nice.
But we can't, yeah,
Yeah, so that's why we have to do our best.
to project that. So
Projection.
that we know,
Mhm.
because we have a general idea of what we're gonna make, so we can say, because if we make even what we did this year, 11 million,
Mhm.
just coming up on the third year,
Mhm.
okay, so we anticipate at least making that, right?
Right, and if we made, the first year was 8, right now it's 11.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we had anywhere from 8 to 11 left
Yeah.
over, now it's gonna be 3 million less because there's 3 million I'm not putting in. But that's still more than what we expect that we need.
Even if we don't, yes, be back to the first year rate, which is
Right,
good.
I'm not, yeah, I'm definitely, I'm putting more than what I expect to need, still.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like it's been a good thing to me. If we started with 0 and now
Oh,
we
yeah.
have 19 million.
Yes, sir. That was a good thing. That was my introduction to BOG, is working
Yep.
on that. And they had been working on, thinking about doing that. And it was a really good move for the district.
Well, and I would say, because we'd be remiss not to say, so this is again, a collaborative effort of the BOG working together. This has been discussed before, and we didn't want to go down this road before, but we did. It's been successful. I think this board knows that. I think the research says that once every 5 years, you're going to have a bad year, and that's where we should have the 6 to 7 million, and Ms. Perry knows the exact number, 6 to 7 million set aside. And what she shared with me is that we have 19 million set aside. And I think as we go down into the future, there's going to be some good things that we'll be able to do with those dollars.
Yes, we've been able to add some things to help the employees, which have been really great.
So back on this
We're still
number.
covering 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
sir.
yeah,
Of
it doesn't affect.
employees.
Yes, sir, we're still paying 100%.
And so by keeping that money before it goes into safe harbor, that doesn't influence what the employee has to pay for medical or anything like that,
No, ma'am.
right?
The
It doesn't
the
affect
plan
them.
has not changed at all.
Okay, they don't have to pay more of a deductible or anything?
No, ma'am.
It does not affect the employees at all?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
In this current plan,
Mm-hmm.
the employees have not been affected at all.
Okay, good.
Correct.
That's unheard of nowadays.
That's what that's,
For insurance.
so this number that you have there that you're showing, where it says the group insurance, health and hospital, that amount, that's what we're paying for employees?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Remind me the total amount of ESSER funding that we're losing, that we're having to fill. Do you remember off the top of your head? If not, then we can,
There was approximately, I think, 11 million in
okay.
just in personnel, let alone the software programs and other pieces. And again, Ms. Perry would have to
Do some research.
She'll have to do the research on that, but I believe it was approximately 10 to 11 million on personnel, several million in different software programs, but she can get those specific numbers.
But that's what we're doing, I mean, all the cuts due to
Sure.
all the ESSER money that we
Sure.
have.
Sure.
And that's,
That's a lot of money in salaries, 11 million
And
personnel.
that's why a friend of mine told me one time, Lamar, don't ever show up at a board meeting because they might ask you a question.
Yeah, but I'll make sure and get that to you. Yes. And, but yeah, we're very proud that we were able to, with superintendent's recommendations and the board's work, we were able to fill all those ESSER holes. And this was the final piece, being able to not fund that self-insurance quite so much. That finished up filling the ESSER hole.
well, and I
So
think,
now, yeah.
well, a lot of that was due to looking ahead and preparing for this and not waiting till just this year. You did a lot to prepare us for the,
Oh,
and
yes.
cutting back
Yeah.
and
Yeah, beyond this
preparing
discussion.
for this day.
Absolutely. This is 2 years in the making in terms of
Mhm.
where we are today. Mrs. Perry knew that this would be a tough year. And again, like we've shared, the truth of the matter is, if COVID never happened, we would have been where we are today, however many years ago COVID was, in 2020, we would have been there then, of having to make some adjustments.
Right.
And we were able to do this, Julie, without anyone losing a position. You were able to keep us whole, basically.
Not completely. There are some on the ed support side. There are some positions that, and Dr. Hale, you could talk more specifically. There are some ed support positions, but I believe what
But
you've
not
said to
many.
me is everyone who lost a position had the ability to take a position.
Good.
That's correct. We
That's
entered into
good.
conversations with each person who had been no position and made an offer of some position. And whether they accepted it or not was up to them. And some declined, some chose to wait, and some accepted it. But everybody was offered something.
So they were offered a space to have a job. That's good.
But to your
Thank you.
question, we definitely knew that adjustments had to be made this year, and not only do we want to keep every employee, we want to add employees. But we knew that there would be some situations where could somebody lose a job? They could. Our goal was any employee whose position was removed, that they were offered another position. So that was the goal, whether that be ed support or whether that be instructional. That was the goal.
Well, I have to say, I'm proud that our board listened to the recommendation of the BOG on this insurance. And I know that there were a couple years there where we just kept seeing increases, on our premiums. It was getting in double digits, and I know it's a scary when you're self-insured because you don't have that backup, but we were losing. So I'm glad that the BOG worked that out and presented it to us, and we, went with that. It looks like it's a positive thing for us, and that's good.
All right.
Okay.
So we'll get into Dr. Hale's budgets.
Okay.
What page? Where we
Right.
at?
So I think probably the easiest thing may be just to look at this comparison sheets, but I also have the detailed sheets here if you want to look at them. So these are the
Comparison,
comparisons.
and the other's the detail.
Yes,
Okay.
and what the comparisons do is they take what I have in the let me go over the setup. So the department book has the org charts, like for the assistant superintendent, and then for the specific departments. And then it has a
Bless you again. So, but those aren't the same.
Well,
Those
it'll
are
be,
different.
there were a different number of standby positions at each center.
All right, so that's how you
So
did it.
Central had the fewest.
Okay,
When you go to North, they had 9.01 FTE, which was 17 positions with insurance that we had budgeted, and the money was tied up there.
got it. And so I think we just approved a new transportation person.
We did.
And Mr. Meyer, I see this is also under your area, but Mr. Gore, was he involved? Y'all involved him in this, or Mr. McInnes, or?
In the budget itself?
Yeah, right.
That was done by Mr. McGinnis, because it was
Okay.
before,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
He's aware, he's been.
Okay. Okay, I mean,
So-
so you don't expect them to squawk about $1 million, roughly?
Mr. Meyer, so
Mm-hmm.
what are the plans about the buses here when we totally finish this complex?
So nothing's been decided for sure, but we know parking is an issue. Right now, we're looking at a few other locations to move either some of the buses or all of the buses. We were hoping to have some spots in the backside of this building. We may or may not when maintenance moves. I think we're going to have additional space, but with the amount of buses that are out there, they all won't fit on the backside of this. So could we put them at another space that we have in the central location? We're trying to do that now. And then we can redesign this parking lot and potentially add more spaces if we design how we park. So that's all being considered when we look at that.
So what about the, working on the maintenance part? Is that what you're talking about? That
Yes,
would
ma'am.
stay here?
No, ma'am.
would have to go
it's
where they
moving,
are.
And we're
Yeah.
in the middle of that. They're going to a partial on Lewis's property.
Mm-hmm.
So that would move some of the area they needed for storage, for their equipment, their trucks,
Mm-hmm.
and then provide some space for those buses to move.
So is there space there for all the buses to go?
No, ma'am, not all the buses.
So wouldn't you need to have the maintenance part with the buses?
No, this is maintenance separate from transportation. Transportation's
school
going to stay here.
I
and-
gotcha.
And the mechanics were going to stay here.
Okay.
But there's not enough space for all the buses
Gotcha.
out front.
Okay.
Well, and I don't know enough about it, but there may be some advantages that I'm unaware of having those buses located here,
Could,
other than just, space, but I don't know.
correct. Yep, we're looking at all.
All right.
And we'll keep you informed.
Okay.
All right.
And I wanted to point out that each of the transportation centers, the superintendent's requesting to add a district-level secretary to each one, and Grant can tell you what they will do.
With the new routing system that we're using, we've only have a few personnel that really knows and understands how to use that. And with Mr. Gore coming on and his tech background, hopefully that's going to improve. But we needed some people to help learn that system at each zone, not just one. And then, they're focusing on the north and we're lacking in the south. So some bus drivers have asked to help with that. So it could be that they're also driving a bus, but we have personnel working on that software, which is going to improve our routes. And then that potentially will also help with communication with the parents if we can tie that system to a way to send that out to the parents, potentially even seeing where the buses are riding. So there's a lot of things that this software can do, and we've only been using it to a minimal standard right now.
And I just want to add to that, for those secretary positions, it's what Mr. Meyer said, but for me, it's so we have someone there before and after school answering the phone. What's happening right now is, because you're short bus drivers, that means the secretaries who have their CDL, they're out driving,
Yep.
which then means when the parents call, I won't even tell you how some of them are answering the phone, but when the parents call, either someone's not there to answer it, or it's answered in other means. So we need to make sure that we have somebody at Central, North, and South that remains there. There's no expectation that they go out and drive a bus, and they're able to meet the needs of all the calls that come in.
Well, and if we move to the high school starting later, then transportation's really going to be busy with the routing and everything going on. That's gonna be a
Those will
big
be adjusted.
undertaking.
And that was what I was thinking, yeah.
And we want that to be as smooth as possible with our, because you're talking every, middle school, elementary, it's,
I promise y'all that we do.
Yes.
well, there's
And the
nothing worse than.
superintendent does.
All right.
Because that's where it's gonna come back to, just like it happened down there in Dade County and Broward and those other counties when they made some changes and buses didn't show and it was a mess.
Well, it's
Okay.
nothing worse than being out of school
Oh.
and not being able to get anybody in transportation
yeah.
after hours,
Right.
and when you can't find a child and parents are
Right.
trying to call, and there's
That's
just,
right.
People are
That's right.
gone, and so I totally support that.
So I know you guys are on this with the change, and I know the legislature just finished. Did they repeal that law?
It has not been repealed.
Okay.
There's discussions
For next time?
going forward. There are discussions.
Good, good.
Okay.
We don't need to do that.
Well-
And the date of that effective date was 25-26, is that right?
August 26th.
August 26, 26, 27 then, okay. So before that time, with these three people, I guess you guys will be running some kind of simulations or something. If you come up with you'll have to come up with an alternative schedule.
Yes, sir. We've already had a few meetings already with the
Okay.
routing coordinators and MIS, and come up with some scenarios and proposals to bring to the superintendent and the board. We're still working through those. It's a big undertaking.
and
It
it's-
involves a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
And on top of potentially having a new K-8 in the north area, not only changing
Yep.
start times, but then
Zones.
rerouting zone. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And it was interesting that when we had our student conversations, every one of the high school students said they did not want that change.
I know.
So when you hear from those that it will directly impact, it really is eye-opening.
Well, I was gonna say that, because at Fort Walton, that was not fair. They
Nobody
did not
wants
wanna
that.
change
No.
it.
Nope.
So
Well,
we
we've
didn't
already
ask the
talked-
students.
right, they
but
We've
didn't
already talked
ask
about
those.
the school board, and it was
Mhm.
Orange County, I believe, that changed to the high school starting later, and folks just didn't like that, and they said, okay, we'll fix that, and they installed 3 new school board members, and they changed back.
Well, we're back.
So, yeah, they don't like it. So, the legislature might be wise to be considering that change. But you can Google that, it's an interesting story. Okay? So that's why I told you, we'll all be very interested to know that it works well. All right?
All right, so does anybody have any questions about any?
No, just thank you very much, Julie. This
is
was really
so
well
much.
organized.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Good job, and appreciate everything you do to make all this work, because
Well,
it's
Thank you so much.
it's a big thing.
And Mr. Chambers, you and your team, I know this is not something that you did in the last few weeks, but this has been months in the working and making, and working with all these different individuals from all these departments, getting their input in it. And I know this is very lengthy and putting together, but nice job, and thank you and your entire team.
And I appreciate you saying that, because if you think about this, yes, months in the making, but really even almost years in the making because of
Yes, sir.
ESSER. And so Ms. Perry and her team and our departments have had to do things differently because of the ESSER dollars that have been here, and which positions to keep, because we feel that they need to be there, which positions to be moved elsewhere or eliminated. So just a lot of time, energy, and thought
A lot of
on
time.
this. But I appreciate Ms. Perry, who pulls the lion's share of pulling all of it together, and definitely appreciate the school board and the support.
People don't realize how complex school budgeting is. It's very complex. It's,
Especially when we receive less and less money, and what they give us, they pull more away.
Yep.
That's, I think, is still very
Yeah.
interesting.
Expect more, give less.
Well, just
Yeah.
like the CTE thing.
Mm-hmm.
That, you still have to budget it, manage it, pay for it, do all those things, but no more revenue.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? All right,
Thank you.
we're done.